Recognize the feeling, but then choose the response.
We teach what we need to learn. You can't see the picture if you're in the frame.
I feel like it really gives the reader actually permission to go there, to take the time to start doing that examination for themselves.
It's just, what do you get excited about doing every day?
I know there are plenty of people listening who have not taken that first step.
Welcome to the Total Succession Show. I'm your host, Tyson Ray, joined by Kim Cochenour. We're glad you're here. Subscribe at totalsuccession.com/podcast and let each episode guide you closer to a confident, well-planned exit. Today's conversation just might be the nudge you need to start preparing for what's next.
When you've spent a lifetime building something, it becomes part of who you are. So when it comes time to actually think about stepping into what's next, no wonder the foundation of all of that starts to shift. And the thoughts kind of creep in of, have I done enough? Who am I going to be when I'm no longer running this practice? And these thoughts come from something deeper. It's part of your money story. And it's a story that you believe about money and success and what makes you valuable. But truthfully, sometimes that story can help you grow, and other times it can hold you back. Today, we're going to be talking about how to recognize the story you've been telling yourself and how to rewrite it so it doesn't stand in the way of the next chapter that you're called into. And there's truthfully no one better to really help us today other than our guest, Bill Cates. As you know, Bill is the referral expert, a Hall of Fame speaker, and an advisor to advisors. Those are key to have in your corner. But today we're actually going to be tapping into a deeper layer of his work that shows up in his newest book, The Hidden Heist, and his recent TEDx talk on how our beliefs around money shape the way we lead, grow, and let go. Bill, we are so glad that you are here, and welcome to the show.
Thank you. I appreciate that, Kim. And just in case anyone misheard, it's not Bill Gates. Bill Cates, missed it by one letter, a few bucks. And while Mr. Gates may have a lot of money, I try to help other folks make more money in the spirit of service to others. And in this case, maybe, transition from their money-making machine, perhaps. So great to be here.
Thank you. So let's do this. Let's really explore how mindset around your money can shape the way you lead, grow, and plan for what's next. So, Bill, I think what would be good from a foundational understanding is, how do you define a money story, and why does that matter for advisors?
Yeah, so first of all, a money story is just really another way of saying your self-talk. And your self-talk can be very conscious. Literally, you're talking to yourself about things. Sometimes a little more subtle, could be feeling, could be more subtle, but that's essentially what it is. It's the patterns of thinking and feeling around, in this case, money. And I know we'll get into this, but those usually get formed when we're very young, younger than most people realize. Why is it important? Well, since we're speaking to financial advisors, I think they already have a pretty good sense of this. What I found they don't often do is because advisors are so knowledgeable about how money works. And that's one way to get in touch with your money story. When you learn how money works, when I learned how money worked, then I started realizing some of the bad messages and unhelpful messages I was getting. So the challenge I found with advisors sometimes is, they kind of think they got it. They think they know it, but they're not immune from this. And we as humans are born into a bit of a scarcity and negativity bias. It's part of our survival mechanism. And that never really goes away. We can kind of rewire it, try to rewire it. So I found that working with advisors, it's good to, number one, have them feel, understand what some of their money stories are that may or may not be serving them. Also with their team, have their team examine that as well. And then you bring more empathy to your clients and their stories, because being a great financial advisor is more than just the numbers and the money. Now, someone in transition, like a lot of folks you're working with, and I've been there, by the way. I've sold 2 companies. I'm in a place with my own business right now where I'm starting to work a little bit less. And so I'm addicted to the hustle. I'm addicted to the, all of that. And anyone who's thinking about transitioning has to face that. So I think today we can talk about beliefs around money. We can also just talk about the whole concept of beliefs and how we tell ourselves stories, and we tell them to ourselves so much and so frequently we begin to believe they're true, but they're not always true.
Mhm.
And so that's kind of my long answer to your question.
Oh, that was a good answer. Well, and I think, and I've heard Tyson say this a couple of times with different advisors, and just thinking about it, like they haven't really applied the work to themselves. It's the old adage, the cobbler's kids don't have shoes, the
Yep.
plumber's pipes leak. They've not really applied that. And I think, Tyson, you've begun to see that in some of the more advisors you've been working with around succession too.
Yeah, I think it's just easy to be doing the work for others that you don't do the work for yourself.
Hmm.
I was reflecting back, and it was an analogy of a thermostat that basically, and whether it's the measure is a certain fear of losing, or that's going down, income levels, those types of things. That if you start touching or getting concerned about those issues, you find yourself motivated to go and grow yourself out of that. And at the same, and so basically you get turned on effectively, like a thermostat gets so cool, it turns on the heat and it raises the temperature. Your life, you reach a certain amount of, or if you have a certain fear level, if you're close to that fear level or worried, you're motivated to go do these other things. And at the same time, we have these thermostats that if it gets too high, or it's like all of a sudden you've defined some level of success that you thought you were going to have, you actually shut off. And I've seen a chart over the years of financial advisors' careers that their income or their production or their difference they make or whatever their business kind of, it doesn't go up linear, it does jumps. And they relate that back to declines that motivated again, or the opportunity that you yourself took off the shutoff valve that was running in the back of your head to continue to be called maybe to do something different. And sometimes I think the mindset is to break free of the game of the money or or wealth. And it's just, what do you get excited about doing every day?
Just in terms of Tyson's comment about we often do the work for other people, don't always do the work for ourselves.
Hmm.
Boy, that's just true in life in general. It's true for me in the business that I do. And sometimes I'm teaching advisors how to get more clients, how to articulate their value better, or whatever. And I need to self-reflect. And I go, well, wait a second. Maybe that's something I need to do. And sometimes it's often said we teach what we need to learn. Uh, and, you can't see the picture if you're in the frame. So that's why folks like us, that's why advisors work with other, advisors who advise them. That's why it's good to have a study group, a mastermind, all of that to help have others kind of shine light on ourselves so we can see parts of ourselves that we either don't readily see or maybe even don't want to see.
Yeah, it's so true. Well, and Bill, to that lens, you have worked with thousands of advisors. And so you have a different perspective on what you see as some of those commonalities. And so for those listening, they might not be even able at a point to identify what some of those limiting beliefs are. So could you talk about a few of the common ones that you see advisors struggling with from growing their business or evolving their business?
Yeah, so one of the first exercises I like to do when I'm working with folks, whether it's giving a speech or even some coaching, um, first thing you want to do is you want to look at the messages you received when you were young. Psychologists tend to believe there's a bit of a consensus that we as humans are forming our beliefs around money around age 7, 8, 9. They begin to solidify, and then uh, and as humans do, we tend to look for things that support what we believe and discount the rest. And
Hmm.
then society kicks in and all that. So the first place is to look at that, because when people look at the messages they receive from their parents or whomever brought them up, they realize that some of that stuff is still operating, but they just didn't think about it. So I'll give you an example. One advisor I was working with, Michael, uh, his parents, mostly his father, was resentful of wealthy people. Didn't didn't respect them, thought they were greedy, grifters, all the negative connotations, right? And so Michael kind of grew up with that. Now he got into this world, um, but realized that that was still playing for him a little bit, and we can't become what we resent. And so that was holding him back for a long time. So that's one example. Gosh, the biggest one that I like to talk to with really every human is this whole idea of scarcity and money as a scarce resource. And intellectually, we advisors particularly understand that money is not a scarce resource. Money flows. The root of the word currency, the Latin root of the word currency is currens, which means flows like a river. And so intellectually, we understand that. But how are we reacting viscerally? Market goes up, market goes down, valuation of our business isn't what, right? And not only does that affect our decision making and sometimes stifles us from making a decision or we make the wrong decision, we communicate that to our team. If we're feeling funky about our business and where it is and what the market's doing or what's happening with clients or whatever, consciously or unconsciously, that's getting transferred to the team members, and they start to get a little nervous and they start to get a little anxious, and then that feeds their own stuff around this. So that whole scarcity negativity bias that we're born into this world is really a big one. Um, and I think it's a constant effort. Now, here's what I've learned. Uh, Most people listening have heard the concept of neuroplasticity, and
Mhm.
scientists used to believe that the brain was static, but now we know it can grow. And so the key is to work on that and to actually rewire those synapses through affirmations, through habits of talking and speaking and thinking and actions.
So I'm listening to this, and that's just like, oh yeah, parents had the business. My dad's business failed. I was 8, 9, 10, 11. Bankruptcy, divorce, right? Eviction notice on the fridge. And I'm listening to this going, that stays. If you have these experiences, whatever they are in your childhood, it's as I've gotten an adult, and I just so fast forward that I get the production today for the quarter, and my response is, well, I guess I'll be able to pay the bills. It's millions of dollars, but it's still kind of there. What I've had to learn to do for decades is recognize the feeling, but then choose the response,
Yep.
right? And realize, okay, that I don't have to live in that anymore. That was back then. That and look at what God has done now, and gratitude, and not be afraid of losing it. But
Yeah.
I've had to consciously over time catch myself not reacting to things from the past that aren't my present.
Yeah. So if I can add to that, one of the messages I got growing up, my parents grew up in the Great Depression, so their money story was naturally cautious. They saw money as something to guard, not something to grow. And so that's what I grew up with. How I became a bit of an entrepreneur and risk taker, I couldn't actually tell you. um, but anyway, but that was a message I had around money. Now, what happened with that is that got internalized and created anxiety for me. And so I've lived with money anxiety, even though I don't need to, it's still there. And I like to use kind of the song on the radio metaphor when that feeling, that thinking, that story starts to play, you just reach over and turn the volume down. So another thing that shows up is the fear of missing out, right? That's part of the scarcity play that happens for us, the FOMO. And, advisors see that with their clients all the time, of course. But advisors experience it well, especially if you're thinking about transitioning, right?
Mhm.
Fear of missing out, fear of,
Oh, yeah.
maybe I should wait a little longer. My business will be valued a little more. I don't want to miss that opportunity. And then also fear of missing your identity,
Mhm.
as you kind of alluded to at the very beginning, because we're in the business for so long, we start to draw our self identity from the business. How do we? And I'm facing this myself a little bit. How do we stay relevant? Right?
Hmm.
We as humans, and especially advisors who have done some great work in the world and made a difference in people's lives, and you have an active mind, you want to stay. You still want to be relevant. Right. And so what does that transition look like to staying relevant? And that can stop people from taking the next step because they're afraid they're going to lose their relevance if they jump into a different area. So I
Yeah.
know we're kind of around the horn with all this, but
Oh, that's
that's
okay.
how the brain works, and why the mindset is so important. Because if we don't have our mindset right, if we don't have our story right, then we'll either make bad decisions or no decisions, and we'll be stuck where we are.
Yeah. So, Bill, to circle on that and the idea of being stuck, I'd love for you to share any examples where you've actually seen those beliefs hold someone back until they rewrote their story. I think that would help maybe our listeners to really identify they can see themselves in it or just know what to look for if that's them.
Yeah, so I kind of touched on one. I'll give you another. One was the Michael and story, and how he couldn't become what he resented, successful, well-to-do, wealthy, whatever, and he became aware of that. Luckily, he did some self-reflection and started working on some affirmations and other ways to get through that. Another advisor, Marissa, um, discovered through a lot of self-reflection that she actually carried a lot of shame with her around money and other things, and so that shame kept her from creating the level of success that she wanted. It kept her from charging the fees that she knew she was capable of charging. Um, so it affected her pocketbook directly in that regard, not just to mention her overall feeling. I interviewed for my podcast, I've also interviewed Tyson, of course, but I interviewed a gal named Tammy Lally, who did a TEDx talk on money shame, which has 2.5 million views. So this thing around shame and shame around money, I didn't think it was a thing, but it's a thing. And so there's a situation where Marissa actually ended up working with Tammy to uncover where did the shame come from,
Hmm.
and how to get past that feeling, and then how to stop that money story and rewrite the money story, so that was no longer there. And she's taken off like a rocket ship since that.
Hmm.
It was almost like a switch in the brain flipped, and she finally got it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's another example. Everyone's a little bit different. Everyone has their own little stuff, but you've got to be willing to take a look at it. It's got to start with that, and it starts with awareness. And that's kind of why I wrote The Hidden Heist. The Hidden Heist isn't a complete makeover. It's a parable, it's a story, but it gets people engaged in the inner conversation, and then perhaps the outer conversation with their team, with clients, etc., family members. So it starts with the awareness, that trigger of awareness, and then the work happens after that.
Yeah. I feel like it really gives the reader actually permission to go there. It gives them a foundation when they're going through the book to really kind of identify themselves in the story, but also to take the time to start doing that examination for themselves. And I think that as a successful business owner, you might not often give yourself that time or permission to start that process.
Oh yeah, of course. It's not always comfortable. It's not what we're used to doing. There's all kinds of to barriers. I guess the final thing I want to talk about in this area is this whole idea of net worth equaling self worth and all that. I mean, as humans, and especially of us in the world of finance, it's pretty easy to fall prey to that. I learned that my money anxiety and other stuff around money was causing me to make decisions to prove to others that I was successful,
Hmm.
right? And I mean, be honest with yourself. Most people do that. Not everybody, but most people.
Yep.
So I like to joke that my cars were a little fancier than my dad. My dad. But when I was growing up, the fanciest car in our neighborhood, they didn't have Lexuses and BMWs and any of that much in the U.S., right? So it was the Cadillac, right? So
Oh, yeah.
our neighbor had a Cadillac, and my dad called that conspicuous consumption, right? So he frowned on that. So my first luxury car was a Lexus. My dad didn't know anything about Lexus, so it was like kind of okay.
You kinda got under the
Uh,
radar with him with that?
exactly. After he passed, I've actually owned a couple of
I
Cadillacs.
was like,
Sorry, Dad. Um, I used to think that my self-worth was measured by the square footage of my home.
"Mm,
We all get caught up into that, and it's okay. Let's not beat ourselves up about it. But let's apply that to where we are now, and what decisions are we making, and can we separate ourselves from that,
Mm-hmm.
Well, and the
right?
interesting thing is that the same in that analogy, and I think one of the mistakes financial advisors fall into, if they don't consciously guard themselves from it, is you're comparing yourself to all of your clients that are building wealth or have built wealth or have multi-generational wealth. And so their toys and their stuff need to become your toys or your stuff, or you're not good enough. It's just constantly comparing yourself to them.
Yeah, yeah,
Um, and there's that extreme, and the people that fall into that trap, and yet there's the other side of that extreme is, and this is true for clients too. It is the wrapping yourself in frugality, not allowing yourself to enjoy
yeah,
any of the fruits of what you're effectively building the pile of cash in the mattress that you're sleeping on, because that somehow is going to bring you joy too. Really realizing that nothing in extremes brings the love and the joy and the peace that we're all seeking, while we're trying to fight off all the hard wiring we got wrong as we've gone through life. As I'm thinking in terms of listeners for succession and what they're going through, I think the scarcity or the fear of not having enough, uh, compounded with, if you get this check, the shame that comes with, oh my gosh, I got all this money, and what about my team and what they get, or those type of things. And then if you flip it on its head, there's also the scarcity of time. Either
yes,
I don't have enough time to get to this, or what am I going to do with my time if I stop?
yep,
Um, and I think the biggest takeaway of this conversation with you, Bill, is the fact that it's recognize the conversations you're having with yourself, and maybe invite some other people into those conversations to flush
yes.
these things out so you're not surprised by them, or realizing you're making decisions because of them and they're not the right decisions.
Exactly, and, it's just thinking about, succession and selling your business, and any are you making how much of the decision, really any money decision if you think about it, what is the motivation behind this decision? And am I doing this to impress? Now, I know that if driving a luxury car or owning a larger home in a nice neighborhood, I've become very aware that a piece of that is from that ego and that trying to prove I'm successful. Nothing wrong with driving great cars. Nothing wrong. I love having a house with, 19-foot ceilings and big windows and all that, right? There's nothing
Yeah.
wrong with enjoying those creature comforts. It's just being aware of where are those decisions coming from,
Mm-hmm.
and then deciding, is that truly me? Is that going to bring me the joy and the energy that I want? Or am I looking in the wrong places to create that joy and energy and peace of mind? So I know it's a little bit esoteric for a lot of folks. Is maybe not the normal conversation you might have about how do you value your practice and all that sort of stuff. But I think it's a pretty important part, because this is what often stops people from moving forward, right?
Uh, yeah, and Billy, you're right. It is a little bit different than the other guests that we've had on or what we've talked about, but I know there are plenty of people listening who have not taken that first step, even though we've given them lots of tangible small first things that they can do. And so I
Right.
think this conversation is really timely to really help give them an opportunity to maybe identify as to what is holding them back. What is the limiting belief that's holding them back?
Yes.
So this is the right conversation in front of the right audience.
And
That
keep in
that
mind, it's the other side too. What is the motivation that's moving them forward with their decisions? Because they both can be wrong.
they could be. They could be. And we're not here to beat people up and judge them.
No,
Uh, it's just, let's look at ourselves. We're human, and take the time out to do that. And so, yeah, I agree that.
so I
Look,
think I think I want to interject, like, okay, what do you do? You're listening to this and you're having these thoughts, and it's just like
right.
almost depressing, and 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 so what do you do with that? And I think the questions that I find myself asking myself is, where's my greatest source of contentment,
Hmm.
and what am I most thankful for? And be really conscious with what the answers are, and are you leaning more into that, because that's what's going to help quiet the extremes.
Yeah, it's true. This whole thing of gratitude. It's been a little elusive for me over the years. Everyone talks about the power of being grateful and gratitude, and in affirmations to rewire the brain, talk about what you're grateful for. That will help shift the mindset and the story. It wasn't until recently, actually, the last year or so, that there's something shifted for me, and I'm now able to do that. So every morning
Hmm.
I write affirmations around money and gratitude and time. Time scarcity is another big one for me, right? It's all back. It all goes back to that, how we're born with a scarcity negativity bias. So we're all as humans fighting against that to some degree. And it's good to know that, because then we don't beat up on ourselves. We know that's okay. That's how we came into this world. Now it's our job to kind of rewire and make better decisions.
Well, that's a good practice, Bill. Thanks for sharing that. So,
Yep.
I want to actually talk kind of what Tyson was saying, like where can advisors go? So, I actually would like to skip to kind of talk to your about your latest book, The Hidden Heist. We've
Thank you.
mentioned it a couple little times. You did write it with Jeff West, and from what we're seeing and what I've actually read too, is it is resonating with other advisors and
Yes.
their teams all over the country. So, can you just give everyone listening a sense about what it's about? Because I think we've talked about it pretty peripherally, but I really want to kind of dig into the root of it.
Yeah, thank you let me tell you about the book a little first, and then just kind of how some advisors are using it.
Yeah.
All right, it's called The Hidden Heist: Stop Robbing Yourself of Lasting Wealth. It's a parable, meaning it's a story.
Hmm.
Um, and people learn very well from stories. So that's one reason we want to do that. And it's so the premise of the story is that it takes place in a bank robbery. And so the first line of the story is everybody face down on the floor. Now, most parable books are kind of light, happy, predictable. Nothing wrong with that. There's some great ones out there. This one's a little bit different. It's got some tension, suspense, plot twists that make it very interesting, because I wanted a story that would keep people engaged. A lot of parable books, you kind of know what's coming, you know what the lesson is. You'll read it anyway to get to the end, but it's yeah, okay, yeah, okay. I wanted some twists and turns. Now, there's also a lot of humor, because
Hmm.
these these three robbers are a little bit bumbly. But while they're trying to get past SWAT and Gabby, the hostage negotiator. By the way, we interviewed a real hostage negotiator, so there's a lot of reality in
Oh,
that interaction. We
nice.
interviewed two bank robbery victims, so there's a lot of reality in that. And I've done
Hmm.
over 100 money stories interviews with folks, and so all the characters in the book are based on real life interviews that I've done with folks. And so emerges a financial advisor, Alden Beckett. It happens to be in the bank, and they're in the vault waiting for the robbers to figure things out. And in the meantime, they're starting to talk about money and the beliefs and mistakes that people make, et cetera, et cetera. The the stereotypes um, that people operate from. So that's the essence of the book, and what it does, of course, it'll get the reader to self-reflect on their own money story and what they learned growing up from others, etc. How it and of course you will then of course see other some of your clients in those stories too, because in dealing with clients and their money. Uh, and so what advisors are doing, they're doing a couple of things. Just got an order for actually 100 books yesterday from one advisor. He's going to be giving them mostly to his clients, in a lot of cases, his older clients to give to their young adult children. So it's kind of part of the generational transfer of wealth kind of conversation. And so it's a soft way to get to introduce the idea of money story and your beliefs and thoughts and emotions around money. So then, in this case, he can then come to them and talk about that. Um, some advisors are starting with their team, and so having everybody on the team read or listen to, it's also available in Audible, to the book, and say, all right, let's talk about our money stories as a team. Here's what I see myself as an advisor. Hey, what do you guys see? And again, it creates that empathy, that all important understanding and appreciation for our customers, and then the stories that they bring in, so that they can build a relationship that's based on more than just the numbers.
Yeah.
and go deeper and wider in their relationships. And when not all clients, but most clients want to be understood and appreciated, and if they have anxieties around money, um, they want you to know that.
Yep.
And it's important for us to know that when a client comes to us and talks about some anxiety or shame or whatever they have, that just because we put a plan in place and have the right products allocation, all that stuff, just right, that anxiety doesn't go away. They
No.
feel a little better. There's a little sense of relief. So you always want to check back and say, how you doing with the emotional side of this, right? You still feeling better about this, et cetera, et cetera. So it just creates a much deeper relationship. And since I've been teaching advisors how to get more referrals and create advocates from their clients, that's an element in creating those advocates. That's an element in becoming more referrable, right? You need to be referrable. You need to be remarkable, worthy of remark. And one of the ways you do that is through the deepening relationships with your clients. So that's how advisors are starting to use the book in different ways.
Yeah. Well, and I'm glad that it has multi purpose, that it's
Mm.
something for them that they can use internally for their team, something that they can use as a tool for them to start the conversation. And then also from the multi generational perspective, because there's a lot of advisors who are struggling to figure out how to bridge that gap. And if they're not securing that relationship before the parent or loved one passes, they have an uphill battle to try and retain those assets if they don't have that in place with the beneficiary. So I'm really glad that advisors are finding a multifunctional purpose with your book.
Yeah, it's a nice little tool to get the conversation started. It's not everything, but it's a piece of the puzzle.
Yeah.
It's kind of a softer way to do it. It says,
Yeah.
I'd love you to take a look at this book and tell me what you think, right? And
Yeah.
that's just an invitation into a conversation that can expand from there. It's important, by the way, that for advisors, if you're going to use the book, um, that you allow your own vulnerability to come through a little bit, whether it's with your team or whether it's with your
Mm.
clients. Here's my money story. Here's what I've learned, whether it's from the book or not, what you've learned about your own money story and thinking. You can't come to this of, here, read this book. This will help you,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
together we're sharing. It's got to come with a little bit of authenticity. Otherwise, it's not going to do the job that you want it to do.
Yeah. Well, and building that relationship with your client over the years didn't come from that mindset either. It came from that reciprocal caring and empathy. So
Yes.
I really think it would be important because I know you had a recent TEDx talk that
Hmm.
touched on similar themes,
Hmm.
obviously the
Hmm.
identities, beliefs, and how our money story can really limit us without even realizing it. But what I think would be great to hear from you is really what inspired that message and what have you heard advisors actually taking away from it?
Yeah, thank you. So, I've been in the financial services world for 34 years. I've helped, as you mentioned, thousands of advisors bring in billions of dollars. I've learned a bit about how money works. I've learned how advisors make money work for their clients. What's happened for me is I've come to see just the critical importance of proper financial planning.
Mm,
And I believe that everyone deserves to make, and when I say everyone deserves to make educated financial decisions that are in their best interest. Um, doesn't mean that you as an advisor can't segment and work with a certain type of everyone, but in general. So that's kind of become a bit of a mission. So this is a bit of a passion project or a legacy work for me. So forever, I've been helping advisors reach more people with the important work, and that furthers my mission. So the book, The Hidden Heist, and my TEDx talk uh, is a little more direct to to others, direct to the consumer, if you will, that some advisors may not be reaching. By the way, in the book and in my TED talk, I advocate for people finding the right advisors for them. So I'm not trying to, you know, do an end around the work I've done with advisors for all these years. I'm saying, no, find the right advisor. We all need to have someone we trust that we can work with. So one of the distinctions I've had to make in a lot of podcast interviews is to remind the interviewer that I am not a financial advisor.
Mm-hmm.
I'm more of a behavioral finance person. I'm more of a mindset. I'm more of a relationship oriented person. So
Mm-hmm.
occasionally I'll get stuck into conversations. I make a joke that I can talk to about personal finance to a certain point, and then I start to get in trouble and have to leave the room. Uh, so I don't pretend to be something I'm not. But this is just a furtherance of my mission. And if I can add one more quick little thing around that, I've just started. We're in the process of formulating the right channels, kind of a hidden heist prison project. In
Mm.
that, um, I want to. We know that people who are incarcerated have a little extra time on their hands. Many of
Mm-hmm.
them like to read. Uh, Many of them are interested in making better decisions about life. And so I'm finding some channels. I have a church, for instance, that does a Sunday ministry at a couple of prisons in Washington, D.C. They're going to start carrying the books in with them to hand deliver to some inmates, and in halfway houses are doing as well. So that's again, part of that broader mission of mine, that everyone deserves to make educated financial decisions that are in their best interest.
I love that. That's a great avenue to kind of explore. So thanks
Yeah.
for sharing that and love to hear how that ends up rolling out for you.
Yeah.
So
Thanks.
I know we're getting close to wrapping up, but I think what would be a good takeaway, if there's someone listening, if they're listening out there and you kind of feel like you've hit a ceiling, but you're really not sure why, Bill, I'd love for you to share what do you think is one belief they should actually take a closer look at?
Well, God, it's hard to answer in a general way because everyone is so different. Um, but I think, generally speaking, so the whole reason I wrote the book, The Hidden Heist, and by the way, it was based on another book I wanted to write, and it
Hmm.
just it morphed into this. And the title of that book, which is now a keynote presentation I give, is called "You Earn What You Believe." And so the essence is this: if we are in a situation where something isn't working for us, or we've hit a barrier of some sort. Um, it could be in personal relationship, could be in business. Quite often, there's one or more beliefs that what we believe about ourselves, what we believe about the situation, about the industry, about the other person. Um, that's a mistaken belief, and it's holding us back. And so, quite often, how folks will even answer this question is from a strategic tactical standpoint. And I'm asking people not to default to strategic and tactical answers, but to first stop and reflect on what is my belief structure? What am I telling myself around this? And how to get to that is usually it's what am I afraid of? Right? What's the concern? If you don't want to use the word fear, fine. What's the concern? Um, what's the worst case scenario in moving forward? So we can start to get a little bit analytical around it, but the first thing we have to do is understand what's going on for us personally, and sometimes we can't do that ourselves, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's why we need a close friend. Could be a spouse, could be a great friend, could be a study group, could be a therapist. Uh, you know, the first Newton's first law of motion: a body in motion tends to stay in motion, a body at rest tends to remain at rest unless acted upon by an outside force. Well, that's us. We're in inertia, we're stuck, uh, and we need that quote unquote outside force to get us to reflect and shift our direction just a little bit. So asking for help from other folks to help us get clear on where we are and where we want to go. And that clarity can make all the difference.
I'm a big believer that advisors need advisors.
Sure.
That 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 some of the biggest mistakes I've made financially or decisions I made in the business were ones done in isolation. That if I would have walked down the doors to my best friend and brother, that's been my business partner for years, he'd been like, "No, that's a dumb idea," but I didn't do it. Right. So it's talking to yourself about these things may not change the outcome of some of these things, and so just be honest with yourself. Uh, who is out there that maybe needs to hear what you're feeling and thinking about what we're talking about today.
Can I tell you something I discovered recently? So, and this is backed by neuroscience. So part of the system that I teach in terms of getting more referrals, introductions, is something I call a value discussion, which is essentially getting our clients, prospects and clients, to speak out loud the value they've perceived in working with us. It could be the meeting, could be the plan, could be the whole relationship, but actually orally speaking it out loud. And I've done some research and learned that there's real neuroscience that backs up what I've been teaching forever. When we speak out loud, we get clearer. There's a clarifying process when we talk. So we've all experienced this where, like you just said, if you have a challenge, something not working, you grab a friend, a colleague, a family member, says, I got to talk this out a little bit. Just hear me out, right? And, you talk it out. And even before your friend or colleague or family member gives you any feedback, you've kind of figured out what you need to do, right? That there's clarity in speaking it out. So we want our clients to speak out the value so they get in touch with the value and we become more referable and we see where the value is. But in this context, if we're stuck, get somebody, speak it out, talk it through, walk around the block and speak it out to the neighborhood. Whatever it is, there is that power in that actual oral speaking things out that helps get clarity and helps that the brain rewiring process get started. So I just want to throw that in. It's a very, it's a tactic, I suppose, but it really can make a difference backed by neuroscience.
I love that. That's really helpful. Bill, thank you. This conversation reminds us that real growth, really, at any stage of your career, starts with what you really believe about yourself. And I really think how you frame this in your book and the addition of that in your TEDx talk, it really helps give advisors some framework to really kind of start working that on their own. And I think that that's a huge tool. So thank you so much for being here to share that with our listeners today.
Hey, it's my pleasure. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks, Doug.
Yeah. So if you haven't watched Bill's TEDx talk, we will actually do you a favor and link it in the show notes to make it really easy for you to catch that. And then we'll also link his book in the show notes, The Hidden Heist. So if you're an audiobook listener, you can just listen to that and really follow along with that story. It is a good listen. I can attest to it. It's a powerful tool to actually help you start the internal work yourself with your team and your clients. And so we'll be back soon with more conversations like this.
These conversations are designed to support your next move, however close or far it may be. Tap subscribe and let each episode guide you closer to a confident, well-planned exit. I've wrestled with these things myself, and that's exactly why I created something to help you do it with less stress and more direction. My book, Total Succession, is now available on Amazon. Inside, I break the process down into 5 clear steps to help you exit on your terms with confidence, full compensation, and your client's best interests at heart. You can also visit totalsuccession.com/podcast to download a free starter guide that walks you through my SPACE framework: see, prepare, act, commit, exit. Remember, you only exit your business once. Create the space to do it well. Thanks for listening. Until next time.